If we're talking about your origin story in Cleveland, we have to talk about the time when you became mayor at a very young age, at the age of 31, one of the youngest mayors in U.S. history. There's a lot to talk about there, but I just want to note the time when there's a story where the mafia took out a hit on you because you refused to sell off the Cleveland utility company. You refused to privatize it. Luckily, the mafia failed in their assassination bid, but you know, it's a long story, but later on, you were honored by the city years later because your decision, your refusal to sell out, saved the city tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I will tell you this. When I was elected mayor of Cleveland, I was the youngest mayor in the country, and I was elected on a promise to save Cleveland's municipal electric system, then known as Muni Light. What I didn't know at the time was that the biggest bank in Cleveland, Cleveland Trust, and the utility, the Cleveland Electric Illuminating Company, all called First Energy, they had interlocking directorates on their board. There are many ways they were the same company. And so I was standing up to them, but I didn't know I was taking on the entire Cleveland business establishment at the time, and some of their friends who were in illicit businesses in the mob. And at that time, in 1976, Cleveland was known as the bombing capital of America. This is no joke. There was a fierce war for control going on between various elements of the mob. And so here I get elected mayor. I take a stand against selling the system. I cancel it as soon as I'm elected. The story begins there because the bank starts to put pressure on me to sell. They threaten to call the city's loans, which they ultimately did. In the meantime, I had 3 assassination attempts. I wrote a book about this. It's called The Division of Light and Power. It's a pretty long book, but it details this attempt to privatize a public power system. And there were hundreds of millions of dollars in public assets at stake. And I knew that. And because, I'll share this with you very quickly. When I grew up in Cleveland, I remember in one of these apartments we were at on St. Clair Avenue, above Martha's Delicatessen at 10712 St. Clair. I was about 11 or 12 years old. And I could remember one night hearing my parents count the pennies so they could pay a utility bill. And I talk about this in the book. I could actually hear the pennies dropping at night, click, 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 as they were counting the pennies to pay a utility bill. And so years later, I'm mayor of Cleveland. I'm in a room with the head of the bank and the head of the city council, and they're trying to force me to sell the electric system. I could hear those pennies dropping in that apartment on St. Clair Avenue, and the pennies dropping all over the city where people wanted to have lower cost electricity. And I knew that if I went along with the privatization, that would be over. Cleveland would have been one of the largest public utilities in the country privatized. So I put my career on the line. I didn't know I'd be putting my life on the line, but here I am, spoiler alert. But I'm grateful to have had the chance of serving in the office of mayor. And I'm looking forward to having the chance of returning to the United States Congress to work on those same economic issues that I've worked on my whole life for the people who I have represented, who now live not in the city of Cleveland, but they're in the suburbs, they're in counties south of Cuyahoga County, which is the county that Cleveland's in.